I wouldn't necessarily call this a cool thing that we're going to talk about. It's actually kind of sad to look over at other multiplayer games and realize how much fighting games are doing wrong and how generally the developers don't even understand that what they're doing is wrong or behind or antiquated in its way of thinking. By that I mean we got an article published, like, I think it was probably like 3 days ago now. What's today, the 11th? Like 4 days ago now. And one of the Tekken producers, specifically Arata, said that younger players prefer team-based games to one-on-one fighting games because they can shift the blame when they lose. Now, I can show you guys the tweet in question. I had to use TK Breezy's tweet because I couldn't find this, but he did. So thanks, TK. I was like trying to Google this and I couldn't find it. But I don't think TK would just throw out random information that's bullshit. So we'll go with it. From what I've heard, it was Harada specifically who said it. And I have a few issues with this take. And I've defended Arata in the past, okay? Just throwing that out there. I'm not some sort of a Tekken hater. I'm also not a Tekken shill. I could give a fuck less for the longevity of Tekken. I've already paid for the game if less players are online. And whatever, I've paid the same amount for games I enjoyed more, and those are dead too, so no big deal for me. There is a few issues with this, and they become very apparent once you look at the bottom sentence of this. Or the bottom part of the sentence, because this is the part that matters, because they can shift the blame when they lose. Okay, so I think problem number one is if you knew your player base, if you understood Tekken players, you would know that people are going to shift blame regardless of if it's feasible or reasonable. Benji, thank you so much for the resub. You're real, dog. 26 months, really appreciate it. If you know anything about your player base as a fighting game developer, or just as a Tekken developer specifically, you would understand and know that people will find ways to shift blame outside of blaming their teammates, right? Because what he's getting at here is that because if you're playing team-based games, the likelihood that you're the worst player on the team is 1 in 4. Sorry, 1 in 5, I guess, right? Say it's a 5v5 game. 1 in 5, it's your fault. 1 in 5. You have a 4 out of 5 chance to say, nah, that guy played worse than me today. It's on him. It wasn't my fault. It was that guy's fault. It was her fault. It was their fault. Them's fault. And that is an argument that you can make, but it's not a very good one. And the reason why is because in fighting games, people shift blame all the time. I don't know the matchup. The connection's too bad. This guy's using a broken character. My character's too weak. We see these same arguments and ways to shift blame across multiple fighting games. Right, you're playing Jamie in Street Fighter 6 before the buffs. Well, you only beat me because you're playing Kanon. Jamie's a low tier, like probably the worst character in the game. You know, like the only character who might be worse than him is like Lily or Zangief. So like, you're not even good at the game or anything. I'm just playing a terrible character. We see this all the like, this is nothing new. So being able to shift blame exists in every medium as long as you want to take accountability out of your hands. If you refuse to hold accountability yourself, then you're going to blame outside factors. There was a whole thing about it called the Scrub Lord's Prayer, or the Scrub's Prayer. It was, that move is broken, and if it's not broken, then this game I don't remember it. You guys go ahead and look up how it goes. It was a Korea gaming video, and I think it was really good. It was very funny. But what this tweet does, and what this headline does, is it actually makes me think of all the other things fighting games are doing wrong. With the caveat that right now fighting games are the best outside of monetization that they've ever been. Right? There are certain things in fighting games that just kind of suck. Right? For all the steps forward we take in fighting games, there's a few steps we take back or that we just have never fixed. Okay? And I think when you look at what modern fighting games have done, it doesn't feel like it's enough compared to what modern other competitive multiplayer online games have done. Right? It's a tough sell. I guess I'll start with it's a tough sell to get someone into a video game when the only way to get them into the game is generally in a competitive 1v1 aspect. So this does have merit, right? even if you're getting into it with friends, the only way to enjoy it with said friends is to just get into a lobby and beat the shit out of each other. Even if you're teaching each other, even if you're learning together, you are, in a sense, still getting the shit beat out of you or beating the shit out of your friend. That is actually the biggest thing I've always said about traditional fighters that I don't like. That there's not good co-op modes to enjoy fighting games together with your friends. That was the reason why I've liked a game like Rumbleverse that no longer exists, and why I'm so devoted to keeping a close eye on the Outrage game, Outrage Fight Fest. Because these are fighting game adjacent, beat 'em up brawlers, beat 'em up games that you can play with your friends, not just against your friends. And that's why I keep an eye on those games and why I have so much interest in them. Number 2, there's a really hard divide between people who are willing to spend $20 to pay to try a game, even with the issue of having to play against your friends instead of playing with your friends, and then on the other side having to pay $40 or $50 or $60 or $70. And that's kind of I think that's the one that I want to say is the most prevalent when it comes to fighting games. It's kind of hard. It's a tough sell for someone to get you to try a game when it costs so much, right? Not only does it cost your time to learn it, because learning fighting games isn't super easy. You can be good at learning, but fighting games are not meant to be easily learned. That's the whole experience of fighting games, is that they're hard, that they're difficult, that they take a lot of time, and they're an investment. Which means in that said time investment, you're also spending money. You spent money, and now you have to spend hours of time losing enjoyment by attempting to learn the game. Right? It's actually kind of strange. It's a funny duality to shooting games, right? Because in shooting games, generally, what you think is, oh yeah, they're like very easy to get into, because most of the popular ones, outside of like Call of Duty, maybe in Rainbow Six, I don't know if Rainbow Six is still paid, Rainbow Six and like Call of Duty, the vast majority of the most popular shooting games on the planet right now are free. They're free to play games. And the first thing you tell someone is, you point the mouse and you press the clicker to shoot, and you move with WASD, or vice versa. You use a controller, you press your RT to shoot, and you move around with the thumbstick. It's very simple. You can tell someone in a fighting game, well, these are your 6 attack buttons. You hold back to block, you hold down back to block the lows, you jump with up and up forward and up back, and you also need to learn how to anti-air, and you have to take it with fighting games generally more than one step at a time. There's like 5 or 6 things you kind of need to know in the beginning of a fighting game, when really you only need to know how to aim and shoot and reload, maybe, in a shooting game to get started. Even if you completely suck, you've at least done the thing that shooting games want you to do, which is shoot and move. And hopefully reload your gun, or you could just keep mashing the shoot button until it forces you to reload because you run out of ammo, because that's how new shooting games work, which is really cool. Nice quality of life thing. I think that there's probably more to this argument. They can shift blame when they lose, but even in the article, I couldn't find anything outside of shifting blame to the teammates, which is like very frustrating. Thing is, as anyone who's watching this video as a fighting game player will know, that you've met tons of people. Either you are that person who tries to shift blame to everything else, the sun being in your eye, your dog chewing the wire of your controller as you were about to finish your combo that won the game, so it made you drop it because your dog got electrocuted and shocked and it shorted out your controller, so you missed your combo. Whether it be that your mom was calling you, so you got distracted and you didn't punish the super because you didn't even know that it was happening, you were just holding down back and the super went completely unpunished. We've heard all these excuses before. Yes, very elaborate excuses. And there are ways to shift blame, even out, yeah, the Johns, exactly, the Johns. We've heard all of these excuses before, and these ways to shift blame, even in a 1v1 game. So, it really makes you think, like, how are fighting games so much further behind other multiplayer games when it comes to the younger generation of players? I can rattle off a few really fast. Higher price tags, worse monetization schemes, difficulty curve, and a lack of ways to enjoy the games with friends. Not against friends, with friends. Those are like probably the biggest determining factors of why people aren't playing as many fighting games, especially younger people. You could also say that it's kind of on the younger people as well, right? Attention spans are shorter. There's been research established, apparently, that attention spans are shorter than they've ever been in human history. That has been recorded. I don't know. I'm not a Zoomer. I can't tell you if I can't hold a conversation with someone for 25 minutes or not. I hold 25-minute conversations with myself on stream every single day. No idea. But it's a shame that this is the mentality and the way that fighting game developers, at least one, maybe that entire group of the Tekken developers, think about the game, right? There's no way that in this interview Harada wasn't told that, hey, there's certain things you can and can't say, like, you're part of the development team, so you kind of have to speak for all of us. And maybe the entire development team, or most of the development team, all agrees with the same sentiment, and it is an awful way of stopping the industry from moving forward. All this does is make it more difficult for the industry to realize that some of the things that exist in fighting games or don't exist in fighting games are really keeping people away from enjoying the medium. We already have Tekken Force in Tekken 8. Why the fuck can't you play Tekken Force co-op on the couch with a friend, Resident Evil 4 Mercenary style? Yeah, you fucking heard me bring up Resident Evil 4 OG on the GameCube Mercenaries. Just a good old classic arcadey shooter experience that you can take turns playing with your little brother or sister, right? And instead, in something like Tekken, you would make it Tekken Force, the part of the story mode where you beat up a bunch of goons and jobbers as one super overpowered character, beat 'em up style. You could just make that Double Dragon and make it so that two people can play, and you can now beat up the people together. Yes, I have showed my little brother things in a fighting game, and he's getting better, but he's not having the best time. He's just the only person you can play with is me. It sucks. Hey, little bro, let's go play some Tekken Force. Hey, yo, let's go play some Tekken Ball. Right? More single player, more multiplayer offline modes that aren't just, because I guess the bigger issue, now that I've talked myself into realizing what another big issue is the gameplay loop of fighting games for everyone outside of the most dedicated player really fucking sucks. Generally, you're paying $60 or $70 to do the exact same thing all the time. I'm gonna move this. I'm tired of the ad being there. You pay $60 or $70 to do the exact same thing you get on the game every single day. And by that I mean, the only way to experience the game after a certain point, you can only replay the story so many times. You can only replay Arcade Quest so many times, World Tour so many times after you've gotten all of the things, built your character a different way, learned all the masters. The only way that you're gonna enjoy it long term is by playing online ranked or casual match. Quick match or ranked. And it's not so much of a different experience from the other online multiplayer games, specifically the free ones, that it feels as if you should pay $70 to do it. Right? If I was like, I want to do the exact same thing every day, I want to get on, play multiplayer, beat on niggas, and then get off the game, I would turn on Fortnite because it's free. I would turn on Halo Infinite because it's free. I want it to be in a 1v1 setting. I don't want all these extra factors. I would turn on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel or Magic the Gathering Arena. These games are all free. I mean, to be fair, Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Have gacha systems, but that's a whole different kind of worms. It's not super easy to play free-to-play in Magic the Gathering Arena, but I digress, right? There is enough other genres of multiplayer games, online specifically, that are free, that have the exact same gameplay loop. When it comes to getting on, in the most primitive of way, getting on, shooting and or beating up people, or playing against others, not with others, against others, and then getting the fuck off the game at the end of the night. There's so many of those, and fighting games don't really stand out in that aspect, and they're expecting you to spend $70 or $60 to do so. And it doesn't feel very modern. It feels very old. It feels very arcadey. And it was fine back then when fighting games were more of a social experience, because we had arcades. I'm old enough. I'm 28 years old. It sounds crazy to say that I'm not one of the young people in the community and in the scene anymore. Holy shit, I'm getting old. I remember arcades. Arcades existed in my city. There was 2 arcades, as a matter of fact, both in malls, both with fighting games, NVC 2, Tekken 3, Tekken Tag, Tekken 4, Soul Calibur 6. I'm sorry, Soul Calibur 2. What the hell's wrong with me? and some other fighting games. There was a myriad of fighting games. There was a good few between the 2 arcades that existed in my city. And playing those fighting games with others was a social experience that no longer exists. Now you're just sitting in front of your computer or sitting on your couch on your PS5 with your nice controller and just playing against others that you'll probably never run into again in ranked if the player base is big enough, that you'll never interact with outside of just beating each other up unless you try to find them on social media or add them through the game's sometimes very hard to understand and use friend systems. It's not the same feeling of community and player engagement that it used to be back in the arcades. We've lost that magic, gained a bunch of other things, but haven't moved around the times of understanding that fighting games are I've had this talk, and I'm sure I put this video up, that fighting games are no longer competing with just fighting games for your time, attention, and money. They're competing with every single other multiplayer online game out there. And because that's what they're competing with, they're losing on all fronts. Street Fighter is getting its fucking ass beat. It's getting fucking rocked by Call of Duty, by Fortnite, by Valorant. I got called the N-word like 6 times in 2 games of Valorant. I won't ever play it again. But even a game like Valorant, Overwatch, all these games are just beating Street Fighter, biggest fighting game outside of Brawl. Boom, boom, hitting them with the fucking 1-2 punch. They're getting their asses beat. Put your hands up. You're Street Fighter. Fight back, nigga. Fight back. Reasons I'm always open to try new fighting games, new games or fighting games, as long as I have the money, or hell, I'll go someplace where I can try it. Yeah, I think having a local scene makes fighting games feel more community oriented and less of a financial burden to get into naturally than they would otherwise. But because so many people don't have local scenes, or local scenes are a lot smaller because online is a lot better, so people make the excuse not to go out anymore, it feels as if these games are playing a tug of war with themselves for trying to keep their player base numbers up and trying to introduce new players, but while trying to keep their margins for profit as high as possible. They do not want to lose money on the low end to get people in, to create a bigger player base of people who are more likely to spend money. I don't want to say this, but my God, free-to-play players understand that players can become payers. Fighting games don't understand that. They're like, well, you bought the $70 initial investment, and then we want you to spend, another $40 on the DLC for the season. Oh yeah, and then we also have a battle pass now. Oh, and we have skins, and we're not going to sell them in bundles anymore. So get fucked, spend $100 on costumes for Street Fighter 6 if you want them all, right? It feels very antiquated. Fighting games have never really had good monetization ever, right? You used to have to buy another version of a game when there was a patch. Like, you'd buy Street Fighter 4, then you'd buy Super Street Fighter 4, then you'd buy Arcade Edition, and then you'd buy Ultra, which was also bad. And then they also had skin packs, right? It was also bad, but it felt less antiquated at the time than it does today. The way that we currently monetize our fighting games and expect them to compete with other genre-adjacent things, multiplayer online games. Fighting game monetization was cutting edge in 1991. Yeah, that's crazy to say, right? I wasn't even fucking born yet. Nigga, I'd be 33. That's not good. I would love to see fighting games get out of this, right? I would love to see fighting games get out of this mentality of, oh, we're just trying to keep... I think... So there was a developer conference a while back about... I think it was like they were talking about different things in fighting games and in their monetization and how they patch and stuff like that. And the Tekken devs got asked, hey, like, how do you view free-to-play, and does free-to-play seem like a viable strategy for, the near future? And the Tekken developers laughed. The Tekken producers, sorry, laughed. Now, at first, I thought they laughed because they realized, or thought, making a game for free and then letting people in the door for free and then them paying us back over time is like a fucking horrible idea, right? That's what I thought. But now I understand that they were laughing because what they really wanted to do, and what all these fighting games are currently doing, and it feels awful, is instead they charge you for that at the beginning and then still monetize the game as if it's fucking free to play. They actually get to rob you twice, nigga! You got robbed twice! And everyone who loves fighting games is, maybe they're not okay with this, but they love the genre so much that they just let it happen all the time. And we just continually buy into these. We continually buy into them. We purchase them. We support them because we don't want our favorite game to die, to not get another sequel, to no longer exist. We don't want that. No, we have to support our game. But because we're supporting that game financially, they're not learning their lesson of that this is terrible monetization in comparison to everything else with the same basic primitive gameplay loop of getting online, playing against others, queuing up for the next match, playing against others again, and then going to fucking sleep or going to work after. We are worth so much more as consumers. And it's unfortunate that this way of thinking right here is how fighting game developers, most of them at least, view their genre. They believe that they think they're the victim. They're like, oh no, people don't like us little fighting games because, when you play us little fighting games, you got nothing to blame but yourself. That's a lie. You're gonna find something to blame no matter the genre. Which means that you've got other issues keeping people from getting in the door of your game. I think I named a few here. If you guys can think of some more issues that fighting games have, leave them down in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoy this style of content, the random rants. Subscribe to the channel. I would love to get to 1,000 subscribers and make that mucho dinero on YouTube eventually. Anyways, this has been Beanie Thuggish talking about fighting game developer mindsets, fighting game producer mindsets, monetization, signing out and saying peace.